The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wide like the inside of a giant shell. Lights floated in the air without any wires. Platforms of smooth white stone held the representatives of 100 different species. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of things that no human word could describe. They came from worlds scattered across the galaxy, and they gathered here on Nexus Station to make decisions that shaped the fate of trillions. Today, the chamber was silent. Not the comfortable silence of peace, but the heavy silence of fear. Ambassador Thessan of the Velthari stood at the center platform. His body was beautiful in the way that glass sculptures are beautiful. His skin was made of living crystal, pale blue and shimmering. His eyes were like 2 drops of liquid silver. His people, the Velthari, came from a world of gentle winds and soft rains. They had never known war. They had never needed to. Now, Thessan was shaking. Small cracks appeared across his crystalline arms. When a Velthari was scared, their bodies showed it. "Please," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "I beg you, all of you, my world is dying." The representatives shifted on their platforms. Some looked away. Others pretended to check their data tablets. Nobody wanted to meet Thessan's silver eyes. "The Crick swarm arrived 14 days ago," Thessan continued. His voice cracked like his skin. "They came in ships that blocked out our sun. Millions of them. Tens of millions. They landed on our northern continent and began. He stopped. The memory was too painful. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a beautiful city of crystal towers and floating gardens. Then it showed that same city burning. Strange creatures moved through the streets. They looked like insects, but they were the size of ground vehicles. Their bodies were a mix of metal and flesh. They had too many legs and too many eyes and mouths that never stopped moving. The Cricks. The hologram showed Velthari civilians running. It showed them being caught. It showed them being dragged into massive organic structures that the Cricks built from their own bodies. Processing centers, they were called. Places where living beings were broken down and turned into food for the swarm. Several representatives made sounds of disgust. One of them, a being made of pure light, dimmed itself and looked away. 40 million Crick soldiers are now on my world, Thessan said. We have no army. We have no weapons. We have artists and scientists and teachers and children. We have 10 billion people who have never hurt anyone in their lives. And the Cricks are eating them. He fell to his knees. The sound of crystal hitting stone rang through the chamber. Please, send your fleets. Send your soldiers. Send anything. We will give you anything. Our technology, our resources, our eternal loyalty. Just save my people. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the Drenathi ambassador floated forward on his anti-gravity chair. He was a soft creature, like a jellyfish with too many tentacles. His species was known for their wisdom and their caution. Ambassador Thessan, the Drenathi said, the Concordat offers its deepest sympathies. What is happening to your world is a tragedy beyond words. Thessan looked up with hope in his silver eyes. However, the Drenathi continued, the Concordat's military resources are currently committed to 12 active conflicts across the galaxy. We simply do not have the forces to spare. But surely, I speak for the Drenathi Collective when I say that your people are in our thoughts. We will pray for your salvation. Thoughts and prayers. That was all they offered. Thoughts and prayers, while the Cricks ate children. Thessan turned to the Morvani delegation. They were tall beings with long necks and cold eyes. Their military was powerful. Surely they would help. The Morvani hegemony regrets that we cannot assist, their ambassador said before Thessan could even speak. Our defense treaties do not cover your sector. To deploy our forces would be a violation of galactic law. Law? Thessan's voice rose. You speak of law while my people die? Law is what separates civilization from chaos, Ambassador. I am sorry. Thessan turned to the Scythene. They were small creatures with large eyes and quick movements. Their ships were fast. Their technology was advanced. The Scythene Confederacy maintains strict neutrality in all conflicts. Their representative said, we cannot take sides. It would damage our position as neutral traders. Taking sides? Thessan stared at them. The Cricks are monsters. They do not negotiate. They do not trade. They only consume. How can you be neutral against extinction? The Scythene said nothing. They simply looked at their feet. One by one, Thesson begged every species in the chamber. One by one, they refused. They had excuses. They had reasons. They had 1,000 different ways to say no while sounding very reasonable. The truth was simple. None of them wanted to fight the Crix. The swarm was too large, too dangerous, too hungry. Any fleet that engaged them would suffer terrible losses. And for what? To save a species that had nothing to offer but art and music? The galaxy had done its math. The Velthari were not worth the cost. Thesson felt his heart's breaking. He had 3 of them, and each one cracked like his skin. He looked around the chamber at all these powerful beings, all these great civilizations, and he saw cowards, every single one of them. Then his eyes fell on a platform he had almost forgotten about. It was in the far corner of the chamber, away from the bright lights and the important species. The beings sitting there were not beautiful or elegant. They were short and stocky and covered in strange, soft material called skin. They had only 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. They were simple-looking creatures. The Terrans, humanity, the newest members of the Galactic Concordat. Thesson had heard stories about them. Everyone had. They came from a planet called Earth, a world so dangerous that most species could not believe it was real. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was full of a corrosive gas called oxygen. The planet had earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, floods, and deadly radiation from its own star. It was covered in predators that killed for food, for territory, sometimes for no reason at all. The Terrans had evolved on this nightmare world. They had survived. More than that, they had conquered it. They had spread across their planet, killing anything that threatened them, building cities on every continent, even on the frozen ice at the ends of their world. They had reached their moon in less than a century after discovering powered flight. They had colonized other planets in their system. They had built ships that could cross the stars, and they had done all of this while constantly fighting each other. The Terrans were famous for their wars. They had killed more of their own kind than most species had ever produced. They had built weapons that could crack planets open. They had developed diseases in laboratories just to kill their enemies faster. The galaxy called them Deathworlders. It was not a compliment. Most species avoided the Terrans. They were too strange, too violent, too unpredictable. They smiled when they were angry. They laughed when they were scared. They kept pets that could kill them. They ate plants that caused them pain. Nothing about them made sense, but Thesson was desperate. He had nowhere else to turn. He walked toward the Terran platform. The other species watched him with something like pity. Everyone knew the Terrans were too new, too small, too limited. They had only joined the Concordat 50 years ago. They had a handful of colony worlds and a modest fleet. What could they possibly do against 40 million Crix? The Terran delegation consisted of 3 humans. 2 of them were soldiers in gray uniforms, standing at attention like statues. The third was a woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple black suit. A small pin on her chest showed her rank. Director Chen, Thesson said. His voice was weak now, almost broken. I know your people are new to the Concordat. I know you have limited resources, but I have nowhere else to go. I am begging you. Please. Is there anything you can do for my people? Director Chen looked at him for a long moment. Her face showed no emotion. Humans were famous for hiding what they felt. It made them very good at negotiation, and very difficult to trust. Ambassador Thesson, she said finally, I have listened to your plea. I have seen the images from your world. Tell me, how many Crix have landed? Estimates suggest 40 million ground forces, perhaps more. Their fleet remains in orbit. Director Chen nodded slowly. She turned and exchanged a look with one of her soldiers. Something passed between them. A message that needed no words. The Terran Republic cannot send a fleet, Director Chen said. We have our own worlds under Crix threat. Our military is stretched thin. We do not have the ships or the soldiers to fight a war on your world. Thesson felt his last hope crumbling. Even the Deathworlders would not help. However, Director Chen continued, we can send something else. Thesson looked up. Something else? What do you mean? The Concordat has refused to help you because they do not want to pay the cost. They are afraid of the Crix. We understand this. Fear is rational. The Crix are terrifying. She paused. Her calm eyes grew cold. But humans do not fight the same way other species fight. We do not need fleets and armies to solve problems. Sometimes we need something simpler, something older. I do not understand. Director Chen stood up. She was not tall by Terran standards, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire chamber. Ambassador Thesson, we cannot send help to Velthus Prime, but we can send a solution, if you are willing to accept it. Anything, Thesson said. I will accept anything. Be careful what you promise, Ambassador. What we send will not be pretty. It will not be clean. It will not follow the Concordate's rules of war. But it will work. The other species were listening now. Their curiosity had overcome their indifference. What were the Terrans planning? What will you send? Thesson asked. Director Chen smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. A monster, she said. The chamber erupted in whispers. The Draenathi ambassador floated forward, his tentacles twitching with agitation. Director Chen, the Concordate has strict rules about military intervention. You cannot simply deploy. The Concordat has refused to help. Chen interrupted. That means the Concordat has no authority here. This is now a bilateral matter between Terra and Velthus Prime. Our rules. Our methods. This is outrageous. The Council must do nothing. You had your chance to help. You chose to offer thoughts and prayers. We choose to offer something more substantial. She turned back to Thesson. Ambassador, do you accept our offer? Thesson looked at her. He looked at the hologram still floating in the center of the chamber, showing his world burning. He thought of his family, hiding somewhere in the crystal caves beneath the capital city. He thought of his children. Yes, he said. Whatever you are offering. Yes, I accept. Then it is done. Director Chen touched a device on her wrist. I am authorizing Protocol Remnant. Immediate deployment. Target, Velthus Prime. The soldiers behind her nodded and left the platform, moving with quick, efficient steps. The Morvani ambassador stood up. Director Chen, what is Protocol Remnant? What are you sending to that world? Chen looked at him. For a moment, something flickered in her calm eyes. Something that might have been sadness. Or regret. When humans first reached the stars, she said, we thought we would find a universe of peace and wisdom. Instead, we found the same things we had on Earth. Predators and prey. Kill or be killed. We realized that the galaxy is not a garden. It is a jungle. She paused. So we made something for the jungle. Something that could survive where nothing else could. Something that could do what needed to be done, no matter the cost. You speak in riddles, the Morvani said. Answer the question. What are you sending? Director Chen looked at him. Then at the whole chamber. Every species was watching her now. His name is Marcus Cole, she said. And when you see what he does to the Crix, you will understand why humans have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. She turned and walked away. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. We do not just adapt to nightmares, Ambassador. We create them. The chamber exploded into chaos. Species shouted questions. Ambassadors demanded explanations. The Draenathi called for an emergency vote. The Morvani threatened diplomatic consequences. But through it all, Thesson stood still. He did not know what a monster was. He did not know what Protocol Remnant meant. He did not know anything about this Marcus Cole. But for the first time in 14 days, he felt something strange growing in his crystalline chest. Hope. Somewhere in the cold dark of space, a message traveled faster than light. It raced through relay stations and quantum networks, crossing thousands of light years in seconds. It reached a planet covered in blue oceans and green continents. It dove through the atmosphere, through layers of rock and metal, down into a mountain that had no name on any map. In a room that officially did not exist, a screen lit up. Red letters appeared. Asterisk, asterisk, protocol. Remnant, authorized asterisk, 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 target. Velthus Prime asterisk, 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 asset. Cole. Marcus asterisk, 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 status. Thaw, immediately. Asterisk, asterisk. In a chamber filled with ice and silence, a pod began to warm. Frost melted from a small window. Behind the glass, something moved. A hand pressed against the window from inside. It was scarred and strong and did not shake at all. After 30 years of frozen sleep, the monster opened his eyes and smiled. The mountain had no name because it did not officially exist. On every map and every satellite image, it appeared as just another peak in a long range of mountains that stretched across a northern continent. But beneath that mountain, dug deep into the ancient rock, was a facility that held the darkest secrets of the Terran Republic. General Elena Vasquez walked through corridors that had not seen light in decades. Emergency systems had turned on when the message arrived. Red lights spun in the ceiling. Dust floated in the air like ghosts. Her footsteps echoed off walls that were 3 meters thick and lined with materials designed to block every kind of scan known to science. She was not alone. A team of 12 soldiers followed her, all of them wearing full combat armor. They carried weapons that were not standard military issue. Weapons designed to stop things that regular weapons could not stop. "General," said Captain Torres, walking beside her, "are you certain about this? The records say he has been frozen for 30 years. That is a long time, even for a remnant." "I am not certain about anything," Vasquez replied. "But Director Chen gave the order, and she does not give orders without good reason." They reached a massive door. It was round, like the door to a vault, and covered in warning symbols that most humans would not recognize. Vasquez placed her hand on a scanner. The door hissed and began to open. Cold air rushed out. The temperature inside the chamber was far below freezing. Frost covered every surface. In the center of the room, surrounded by monitoring equipment and life support systems, stood a single cryogenic pod. The pod was open. Vasquez raised her hand. Her soldiers stopped and aimed their weapons at the darkness. "Cole," she said. Her voice was steady, but her heart was beating fast. "I know you are awake. Step forward." Slowly, for a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. Marcus Cole was not what most people expected when they heard the word soldier. He was not tall and muscular like the heroes in old movies. He was average height, maybe a bit shorter than the soldiers behind Vasquez. His body was lean, built for speed and endurance rather than raw strength. He moved like water, each step smooth and silent. His face was the face of a man in his late 40s. Lines around his eyes, gray in his short hair, a thin scar running from his left eyebrow down to his cheek. But his eyes were wrong. They were gray, like storm clouds, and they held no warmth at all. Looking into them was like looking into the eyes of a predator that was deciding whether to eat you now or later. He was wearing only the thin medical suit that cryogenic patients wore. His feet were bare. His hands hung loose at his sides. He looked completely harmless. Vasquez knew better. "General Vasquez," Cole said. His voice was rough from 30 years of disuse, but there was no confusion in it. No disorientation. He was fully awake, fully aware. "I recognize you. You were a colonel when I went under. Congratulations on the promotion." "Thank you." Vasquez did not lower her guard. "Do you know why you have been awakened? I assume someone needs something killed." Cole looked around the room, taking in the soldiers, their weapons, the fear in their eyes. "Something big, from the looks of it. You brought a lot of firepower just to wake me up." "The firepower is a precaution. Standard protocol for remnant revival." Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "You think those weapons would stop me if I decided to walk out of here?" "No," Vasquez admitted. "But they might slow you down." "Might." Cole nodded slowly. "I appreciate the honesty. Most people lie when they are scared." He walked forward. The soldiers tensed. Vasquez forced herself to stand still. Cole stopped an arm's length away and looked at her with those dead gray eyes. "So, what is so terrible that you need to dig up old monsters like me?" Vasquez pulled out a data tablet and handed it to him. Cole took it and began reading. His face showed no expression as he scrolled through the reports. Images of Velthus Prime, data on the Crick swarm, casualty estimates, tactical analysis. 40 million Cricks, he said after a few minutes. "That is a lot. Can you do it?" Cole looked up from the tablet. "Can I kill 40 million enemy combatants on a foreign world with no support, no backup, and no extraction plan?" "Yes. That is the question." Cole considered this for a moment. Then he laughed. It was a dry, empty sound, like bones rattling in a box. "I have done more with less," he said. "But I need to know. What are my rules of engagement? Vasquez met his eyes. There are none. Something changed in Cole's face. It was subtle, just a slight shift in the muscles around his mouth and eyes, but it transformed him from a tired old man into something else entirely, something hungry. No rules, he repeated. No restrictions. No legal limits. The Concordat has refused to intervene. This is a bilateral operation between Terra and Velthus Prime. You will be operating outside Concordat jurisdiction. Whatever you do, we will claim no knowledge of. And if I use methods that the Concordat considers war crimes? Vasquez hesitated. This was the part she had been dreading. Director Chen's orders are clear. Do whatever is necessary to eliminate the Crick's presence on Velthus Prime. Whatever is necessary. Cole stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Vasquez called. To the armory, Cole said without looking back. I need to pick out my equipment. You have not been briefed yet. There are details you need to know. Tactical considerations. Intelligence reports. Cole stopped. He turned his head slightly, showing his scarred profile. General, I have been frozen for 30 years. That is 30 years of dreaming about nothing. 30 years of darkness and silence and waiting for someone to decide I was useful again. Do you know what that does to a mind like mine? Vasquez said nothing. It makes you hungry. Cole continued. Very, very hungry. I do not need briefings. I do not need intelligence reports. Point me at the enemy and get out of my way. That is all I have ever needed. He walked out of the chamber. After a moment, Vasquez followed. The armory was several levels up, in a section of the facility that was slightly less frozen. Cole walked through the corridors with perfect confidence, as if he had memorized the layout decades ago and never forgotten it. Vasquez supposed he had. Remnants had perfect memory. It was one of the modifications that made them what they were. Tell me about the Cricks, Cole said as they walked. The data tablet only had basic information. Vasquez fell into step beside him. Her soldiers followed at a careful distance. They are a hive species. Biomechanical, meaning they combine organic and synthetic components. Their bodies are engineered for combat. Strong, fast, heavily armored. They communicate through a neural network that links all members of the swarm to a central intelligence called the Overmind. One brain controlling millions of bodies. Essentially, yes. It makes them incredibly coordinated. They can react to threats across an entire planet in seconds. Cole nodded. And their weaknesses? The neural link. If you can disrupt it, the individual Cricks become confused and ineffective. They are evolved to follow orders, not think for themselves. How do you disrupt it? Vasquez hesitated again. This was the other part she had been dreading. We have a weapon, a nanovirus designed to attack the Cricks' neural architecture. It spreads through their network like a disease, corrupting their communications and eventually causing them to turn on each other. A bioweapon. Cole's voice was flat. That violates at least 15 Concordat treaties. Yes, and you are giving it to me. If you choose to use it. Cole was silent for a moment. Then he said, Good. I will use it. They reached the armory. The door opened to reveal a room that looked like a museum of violence. Weapons lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Old weapons and new weapons. Projectile weapons and energy weapons. Blades and explosives and things that had no name in any human language. Cole walked among them like a child in a toy store. His hands touched different items, testing their weight, checking their condition. He picked up a heavy rifle with a magnetic accelerator barrel. Rail rifle, Vasquez said. Fires tungsten penetrators at 3 kilometers per second. Can punch through most known armor. Cole nodded and set it aside. He picked up a cutting tool that hummed with barely contained energy. Plasma cutter. Useful for breaching and close combat. He set that aside too. He moved to a wall of bladed weapons and selected a long knife made of a material that seemed to drink the light. Monomolecular blade, Vasquez said. Edge is 1 molecule thick. Will cut through anything. Cole turned the blade in his hands, watching how the light did not reflect from its surface. I remember these. We used them in the Gene Wars. He strapped the blade to his thigh and continued gathering equipment. Grenades, explosives, ammunition, medical supplies. He worked quickly and efficiently, choosing each item with obvious expertise. You will also need armor, Vasquez said. She led him to a separate section of the armory where a single suit hung on a rack. It was black and angular, covered in sensor arrays and armored plates. It looked less like armor and more like the exoskeleton of some nightmare creature. Remnant combat suit, she explained. Latest generation. Enhanced strength, speed, and endurance. Built-in medical systems that will keep you alive through injuries that would kill a normal human. Sensor jamming, thermal masking, communication, scramblers. It also interfaces directly with your neural modifications. Cole stared at the armor. I thought all the remnant suits were destroyed after the gene wars. Most were. This one was kept, just in case. Cole stepped forward and began putting on the armor. It sealed around him like a second skin, the systems activating with a low hum. When he was finished, he no longer looked human. He looked like something that had crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares. There is one more thing, Vasquez said. She opened a small case and removed a cylinder the size of her forearm. Inside, visible through a transparent window, a dark liquid swirled. The nanovirus, Cole said. Yes. Inject it into any Crix command node, and it will spread through their network. It takes about 2 weeks to reach full effect. Once it does, the swarm will tear itself apart. Cole took the cylinder and attached it to his belt. He stood still for a moment, checking all his equipment, running his hands over each weapon and tool. Transport? He asked. A drop pod is waiting. It will launch you directly into the atmosphere of Velthus Prime. The Crix have anti-air defenses, but the pod is designed to penetrate them. Designed, but not guaranteed. No, not guaranteed. There is a significant chance you will be shot down before reaching the surface. Cole shrugged. Then I will improvise. Vasquez watched him prepare. She had read his file. She knew what he had done in the Gene Wars, in the colonial uprisings, in the dozen other conflicts that had required something more than regular soldiers. She knew he was the most dangerous thing humanity had ever created. And yet, watching him now, she felt something unexpected. Not fear, not admiration. Something like pity. Cole, she said, before you go, I need to ask you something. He turned to face her. The armor made him look inhuman, but those gray eyes were still visible through the visor. When this is over, when you have done what needs to be done, what will you do? Cole was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. I do not know, he said. I have never thought that far ahead. Monsters like me do not plan for the future. We just wait for the next war. And if there is no next war, then they put me back in the ice. And I wait. And I dream of nothing. And eventually someone decides they need a monster again. And they thaw me out. And I do what I was made to do. He turned and walked toward the door. It is not a life, General, but it is the only one I have. Vasquez watched him go. She wanted to say something meaningful, something that might make him feel less like a tool and more like a person, but she could not think of anything. So she just said, good luck. Cole stopped at the door. He looked back over his shoulder. Luck is for people who do not plan properly, he said. I do not need luck. I just need enemies. He walked out of the armory. Vasquez stood alone among the weapons, listening to his footsteps fade away. An hour later, she stood in the command center and watched the drop pod launch. It was a small black shape against the stars, moving impossibly fast toward a distant world where 40 million monsters waited. But Vasquez knew something that the Crix did not know. They thought they were the predators. They thought they were the most dangerous things on that planet. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the darkness of space, the drop pod accelerated. Inside, Marcus Cole sat in perfect stillness, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and steady. He was running combat simulations in his head, planning, calculating, preparing for the work ahead. He thought about the Crix, 40 million of them, claws and teeth and chitinous armor, a collective intelligence that had consumed 100 worlds. They thought they were invincible. Cole smiled in the darkness. He had killed invincible things before. The drop pod carried him toward Velthus Prime, and Marcus Cole began to dream of blood. The sky above Velthus Prime was on fire. Marcus Cole's drop pod screamed through the atmosphere at speeds that should have turned him into ash. The heat shields glowed white-hot. The hull shook so hard that his teeth rattled even through the dampeners. Warning lights flashed across his visor. The pod's computer was telling him that he was going to die. He ignored it. Computers said a lot of things. Through a small window in the pod's side, he could see the planet below. It was beautiful, in the way that fragile things are beautiful. Forests of crystal trees caught the light of the twin suns. Rivers sparkled like liquid silver. Mountains rose in gentle curves, their peaks decorated with towers that seemed to grow from the rock itself. And in the north, a darkness spread. The Cricks had landed there, and everything they touched died. The crystal forests had been burned to slag. The rivers had been diverted into massive organic structures that pulsed with alien life. The mountains had been carved into nests where millions of Crick soldiers waited for orders. Cole studied the darkness as he fell. He was looking for his target, the grand archives of the Velthari. According to the intelligence reports, the Cricks had turned it into a processing center, a place where captured civilians were broken down into biomass to feed the swarm. It was the largest processing center on the planet. It was also the most heavily defended. Perfect. The anti-air fire started at 50 kilometers altitude. Beams of superheated plasma reached up from the ground like the fingers of some angry god. The drop pod's hull screamed as it was hit again and again. Pieces broke off and burned away. The computer's warnings became more urgent. Impact in 40 seconds, the computer said. Warning. Structural integrity at 32%. Hull breach imminent. Abort recommended. Amber denied, Cole said. Warning. Survival probability at current trajectory is less than 12%. I have had worse odds. The ground rushed up to meet him. He could see the processing center now. It was a massive structure of flesh and metal, built from the bodies of dead Cricks and the materials of destroyed Velthari buildings. It throbbed with a sick rhythm, like a heart made of nightmares. Around it, thousands of Crick soldiers moved in perfect coordination. They had noticed the drop pod. They were aiming every weapon they had at it. 10 seconds to impact. Cole closed his eyes and let his training take over. His body relaxed. His mind emptied. He became nothing but purpose. 5 seconds. The drop pod was hit by 17 different weapons at once. The hull shattered. Fire rushed in. The computer stopped giving warnings because the computer was destroyed. 0 seconds. The pod hit the ground like a meteor. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the processing center. Walls cracked. Support structures collapsed. Hundreds of Cricks were thrown off their feet by the blast. And in the center of the crater, something moved. Cole stood up from the burning wreckage. His armor was damaged, cracked in several places, leaking fluids that hissed when they touched the hot ground. His left arm was broken. 2 of his ribs were shattered. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. He felt none of it. The armor's medical systems had already flooded his body with painkillers and combat stimulants. His broken arm was held in place by internal splints. His ribs would heal in a few hours, thanks to the modifications that had been made to his biology decades ago. Pain was information. And right now, the only information that mattered was the 2,000 Crick soldiers that were surrounding him. They were ugly things, even by the standards of alien species. Their bodies were roughly humanoid, but wrong in every detail. Too many joints in their limbs. Armor plates that seemed to grow from their flesh. Heads that were all mouth and eyes, with no room for thoughts that were not about killing and eating. They made clicking sounds with their mandibles. It was how they communicated on the surface. The neural network handled complex thoughts, but simple commands were passed through sound. Cole understood the clicks. His armor was translating them. What is it? One enemy, small, damaged. Kill it. Eat it. Add its biomass to the swarm. They charged. Cole raised his rail rifle and opened fire. The first shot punched through 3 Crick soldiers at once, the tungsten penetrator moving so fast that it did not even slow down. The second shot took off the head of a Cricks that was getting too close. The third, fourth, and fifth shots dropped a group that was trying to flank him on the right. He was not shooting wildly. Every shot was calculated. Every trigger pull was placed exactly where it needed to be. He was not fighting the Cricks. He was processing them. 10 seconds passed. 50 Cricks were dead. 20 seconds. 100. 30 seconds. The rifle overheated and he dropped it, drawing his plasma cutter in the same motion. A Cricks leaped at him from above. He stepped to the side and cut it in half, the plasma blade burning through its armor like paper. 40 seconds. He was surrounded on all sides. He smiled behind his visor. They thought numbers would save them. They thought that 2,000 against 1 was an impossible advantage. They did not understand what they were fighting. Marcus Cole was not a soldier. He was not even a human anymore. Not really. He was something that had been built from human parts but designed for a purpose that no human should ever have to serve. He was a weapon in the shape of a man. And weapons did not get tired. They did not get scared. They did not stop until they ran out of ammunition, or until there was nothing left to kill. 1 minute passed. 300 Cricks were dead. Cole had taken 7 new wounds. He had not slowed down. The Cricks began to pull back. Not far, just enough to regroup. They were confused. Their neural network was telling them that this was just one enemy. One small, soft creature from a species they had never encountered before. But their eyes were telling them something different. Their eyes were telling them that they were dying. Cole did not give them time to think. He charged. He hit their line like a boulder rolling downhill. His fists crushed skulls. His blade opened throats. When a Crix managed to grab his arm, he used its body as a shield and then threw it at 3 of its companions. When another Crix fired a plasma bolt at his chest, he dodged and let the shot hit the soldier behind him. He was laughing now. It was not a happy sound. It was the sound of something that had been locked away for too long, finally set free. The Velthari survivors saw him through the cracks in the basement walls. There were about 300 of them, hiding in the deepest part of the Grand Archives where the Crix had not bothered to look. They were mostly civilians, teachers, artists, parents, children. They had been hiding for 2 weeks, surviving on stored food and filtered water, listening to the sounds of their world dying above them. Now they were watching something they could not understand. "What is it?" a young Velthari whispered. His name was Kellis, and he was only 15 cycles old. His crystalline skin was dull with fear and hunger. "I do not know," his mother replied. She was holding him close, her body wrapped around his like a shield. "It looks like one of the new species, the Terrans, but there is only one of them." "Yes. How is one of them doing that?" His mother did not answer. She did not have an answer. Outside, the battle was ending, not because the Crix had won, but because there were no more Crix left to fight. Cole stood in the center of the processing center, surrounded by bodies. 2,000 Crix soldiers lay dead around him. The ground was thick with their blood or whatever the dark liquid inside them was called. The walls of the building were covered in scorch marks and impact craters. Small fires burned in a dozen places. Cole's armor was damaged beyond repair in several sections. His helmet was cracked. His left arm still hung useless at his side, the splints overwhelmed by the abuse he had put it through. He had taken 37 wounds during the battle. Any one of them would have killed a normal human. He was still standing. He walked to the center of the processing center, where a large organic structure pulsed with a sick rhythm. This was the command node, the point where the Crix soldiers connected to the neural network. If he destroyed it, the Crix in this area would be cut off from the overmind. They would become confused, uncoordinated, easy to kill. But Cole did not want to destroy it. Not yet. He pulled the cylinder from his belt. The nanovirus inside swirled with dark purpose. He found an input port on the command node, a place where Crix plugged in their nerve tendrils to receive orders and inserted the cylinder. The virus began to spread. It would take time. Days, maybe weeks. But eventually, it would reach every part of the Crix neural network. It would corrupt their communications. It would turn their greatest strength, their unified mind, into their greatest weakness. Cole stepped back and watched the virus do its work. Then he turned and walked toward the basement where he had detected life signs. The Velthari survivors saw him coming. They pressed themselves against the walls, trying to make themselves as small as possible. Even Kellis's mother, who had always been brave, could not stop herself from trembling. Cole stopped at the entrance to the basement. He looked down at them with those dead gray eyes. His armor was covered in Crix blood. Pieces of chitin were stuck to his blade. He looked like something from a nightmare. "Are you the survivors?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost gentle. It did not match his appearance at all. Kellis's mother stepped forward. Her crystal body chimed softly as she moved. "Yes, we are the survivors." "Who? What are you?" "My name is Marcus Cole. I was sent by the Terran Republic to help you." "You are? Helping us?" Another survivor spoke up, an old male with cracks running through his skin. "By killing?" "Yes." Cole's voice did not change. That is how I help. I am not a diplomat or a doctor or a builder. I am a killer. Your people asked for help. My people sent me because killing is what needs to be done. The survivors looked at each other. They had never encountered anything like this. The Velthari did not have violence. They did not have war. They did not even have a word for murder. But they understood survival. And they understood that this strange, terrifying creature was on their side. How many of them are left? Kellis asked. His voice was small but steady. How many cricks? Cole looked at him. For a moment, something almost human flickered in his gray eyes. 40 million, he said. Give or take. And you killed. How many? 2,000. So far, Kellis did the math in his head. That is nothing. You cannot possibly kill them all. Cole smiled. It was not a scary smile this time. It was the smile of someone who knew something the others did not. I am not going to kill them all, he said. I am going to make them kill each other. He turned and walked out of the basement, stepping over the bodies of the cricks he had slaughtered. Stay here, he called back. Do not come out until I tell you it is safe. This is going to take a while. Then he was gone, disappearing into the smoke and fire of the burning processing center. The survivors looked at each other. They did not know what to think. They did not know what to feel. Kellis was the first to speak. Mother, he said. I think the Terrans sent us a monster. His mother looked at the empty doorway where Cole had stood, at the bodies piled around it, at the dark blood that covered everything. Yes, she said quietly, but I think it is our monster now. In the orbit above Velthus Prime, the Crick's overmind registered a problem. A processing center had gone silent. 2,000 soldiers had been killed in less than 5 minutes, and something strange was happening to the neural network in that area. A corruption, a disease. The overmind sent a query to the surviving sensors in the area. The response was a single image, captured in the moments before the sensors were destroyed. It showed a creature in black armor, standing among the dead. It was small. It was damaged. It was alone, but it was smiling. The overmind analyzed the image. It cross-referenced it with every species in its database. It calculated threat levels and response strategies, and for the first time in 10,000 years of conquest, the overmind felt something that might have been fear. It did not know that fear would grow. It did not know that this single creature would hunt its soldiers for 6 long weeks. It did not know that everything it had built would burn before this was over. But it was starting to learn. The monster had arrived, and he was just getting started. The first week was about survival. Marcus Cole moved through the ruins of the Velthari civilization like a ghost. He did not sleep. He did not rest. He killed cricks when he found them, but he did not seek them out. Not yet. His broken arm needed time to heal. His armor needed repairs, and the nanovirus needed time to spread. So he hid. He learned the land. He studied his enemy. The cricks were everywhere. Their patrols moved through the crystal forests in perfect formation. Their flying scouts swept the skies in patterns that left no blind spots. Their processing centers worked day and night, turning captured Velthari into biomass to feed the growing swarm. 40 million soldiers. That was the estimate. But Cole knew the number was increasing every day. The cricks did not just consume their victims. They also bred, deep in their nesting sites. Queens laid thousands of eggs that hatched into new soldiers within hours. For every cricks that died, 2 more were born to take its place. A conventional army would have been overwhelmed. Even the combined fleets of the Galactic Concordat would have struggled against such numbers. But Cole was not a conventional army. On the 8th day, his arm was healed. His armor was repaired as much as possible with materials scavenged from dead cricks, and the nanovirus had spread far enough that he could begin the next phase. The second week was about fear. Cole chose his first target carefully, a command hub in the mountains north of the Grand Archives. It was small, defended by only a few hundred soldiers, but it was important. All communications from the southern sector passed through that hub. If he destroyed it, the cricks in the south would be cut off from the overmind for hours. He attacked at night. The cricks did not need sleep, but they did have rest cycles, periods when their activity decreased and their reactions slowed. Cole had watched them for days, learning their patterns. He knew exactly when they were most vulnerable. He came from below, crawling through narrow caves that the cricks had not bothered to guard. He emerged in the center of the command hub, surrounded by hundreds of sleeping soldiers. He did not try to kill them all. That was not the point. Instead, he moved through the hub like a surgeon, cutting out specific targets: command officers, communication specialists, Queen Guardians. He killed them silently, one by one, leaving their bodies where they fell. Then he found the hub's central transmitter and carved a message into its surface. He used the Crix's own chemical language, the scent-based signals they used for important communications. The message was simple: "I am still here." Then he left. He was gone before the first alarm sounded. When the Crix woke and found their leaders dead, they panicked. Their neural network flooded with confused signals. Who was responsible? How had the enemy gotten inside? Where were they now? The Overmind tried to calm them, but the virus was already affecting the network. Messages became garbled. Orders were delayed. Soldiers received conflicting commands and did not know which to follow. In the chaos, Cole struck again, and again, and again. He hit a patrol on the eastern border, killing all 30 soldiers in less than a minute and leaving the same message carved into their bodies. He destroyed a supply convoy, burning their food stores and poisoning the biomass they were carrying back to the processing centers. He found a breeding pit and collapsed the tunnel leading to it, trapping the queens inside without food or water. Every attack was different. Every target was chosen to cause maximum confusion. He never struck the same area twice. He never used the same tactics. The Crix could not predict where he would appear next because there was no pattern to predict. And always he left the message: "I am still here." The Crix began to fear. It was a new sensation for them. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had faced armies and fleets and weapons of mass destruction. But they had never faced anything like this. A single enemy that could not be found, that could not be killed, that seemed to be everywhere at once. They started seeing him in places where he was not. Soldiers fired at shadows. Patrols jumped at sounds that turned out to be nothing. The neural network buzzed with reports of attacks that never happened and sightings that could not be confirmed. The Overmind assigned more resources to finding him. It pulled soldiers from the processing centers and sent them on hunting patrols. It deployed specialized trackers with enhanced sensors. It even awakened ancient war beasts that had been held in reserve for the final conquest. None of it mattered. Cole could not be tracked because he left no trail. He had been trained to move without disturbing the environment. His armor masked his heat and blocked his scent and jammed electronic sensors. He was invisible in ways that the Crix could not understand. And while they searched for him, he was still attacking. The third week was about chaos. The nanovirus had reached critical mass. It was now spreading faster than the Overmind could contain it. Corrupted data flooded the neural network. Orders became meaningless. Soldiers began receiving commands that contradicted each other. Attack and retreat at the same time. Defend and abandon the same position. The first incidents of Crix on Crix violence occurred on the 15th day. A patrol in the western mountains received an order to kill all non-essential units in their area. Another patrol received the same order with different definitions of non-essential. When they encountered each other, both groups attacked. 17 Crix died before the Overmind could restore order. Cole watched from a nearby ridge. He smiled. The incidents multiplied. Corrupted orders spread through the network like fire. Soldiers turned on their companions. Officers executed their own troops for treason that existed only in the broken commands. The breeding pits received orders to destroy their own eggs. The Overmind tried to isolate the corrupted sections of the network, but the virus was designed to resist isolation. It jumped between nodes, hiding in dormant soldiers, spreading through physical contact when electronic methods were blocked. By the end of the third week, the Crix had lost more soldiers to friendly fire than to Cole's direct attacks. And Cole had not stopped attacking. He targeted the remaining command hubs, not to destroy them, but to inject more virus into the network. He killed officers and left false orders on their bodies. He captured communications equipment and broadcast his own corrupted commands. "I am still here," the messages said. "And I am inside your mind." The Crix army, which had landed as a unified swarm of 40 million, was fragmenting. Individual units stopped communicating with the Overmind. Some went rogue, attacking anything that moved. Others simply stopped moving. their soldiers standing frozen as their brains failed to process the conflicting signals. The fourth week was about desperation. The Overmind was panicking. Cole could feel it in the network, even though he was not connected to it. The signals had become erratic, filled with repetitions and errors. The great intelligence that had consumed 100 worlds was losing its grip. It made a decision. A desperate decision. It would consolidate. It would pull all surviving soldiers back to a single location, the primary landing zone where the fleet's transport ships still waited. It would rebuild its forces there, purge the virus from the network, and start over. Retreat. The Krix had never retreated before, not once in 10,000 years of conquest. Cole saw the patterns changing. Patrols that had been hunting him were suddenly moving north. Processing centers were shutting down. Even the breeding pits were being evacuated. He followed. The march took 3 days. Millions of Krix, moving in ragged columns toward the northern plains. They were not the perfect soldiers they had been when they landed. They were damaged, confused, and scared. Many of them could not tell friend from foe. Fights broke out constantly. Soldiers killed each other over nothing. Cole walked among them. Not openly, he was not suicidal, but close enough to watch. Close enough to kill stragglers. Close enough to leave his message on bodies that the others would find. I am still here. By the time the Krix reached the landing zone, they had lost another 500,000 soldiers to the march itself. The Overmind did not care. It had what it needed. 22 million soldiers, consolidated into a single force. The fleet's transport ships were ready. They would leave this cursed world, return to the void, and find easier prey. Cole let them gather. He let them think they were safe. He had been busy during those 4 weeks. Not just killing and spreading virus. He had been planting things. The Krix fleet consisted of 37 major transport ships, each one capable of carrying 1,000,000 soldiers. They were organic ships, grown rather than built, but they still needed fuel. Their engines ran on processed biomass, stored in massive tanks beneath each ship. Cole had found those tanks. He had spent nights crawling through the organic tunnels that connected the ships to the ground. He had planted charges, not many, not big, but placed exactly where they needed to be. He had learned something during the Gene Wars. You did not need to destroy a ship to kill everyone on board. You just needed to destroy its ability to fly at the right moment. On the morning of the 32nd day, the Krix fleet began to lift off. The engines roared. The ground shook. Millions of Krix soldiers felt the relief of escape washing through the corrupted neural network. Then the charges detonated. The explosions were small, barely noticeable compared to the roar of the engines, but they hit the fuel lines at exactly the right spots. The first transport ship exploded 100 meters off the ground. The fireball consumed everything within a kilometer. 2 million soldiers died in an instant. The second ship tried to abort its launch, but the damage was already done. Its engines tore themselves apart and the ship crashed into the landing zone, crushing hundreds of thousands of soldiers beneath it. One by one, the transport ships died. Some exploded in the air. Some crashed back to the ground. Some made it a few kilometers before their damaged engines failed, and they fell like dying stars. Cole watched from a ridge overlooking the landing zone. The northern sky turned to fire. The explosions were so bright that they could be seen from orbit. The sound was so loud that it echoed across the entire planet. 37 million Krix died in less than an hour. The remaining 3 million were stranded. Their ships were gone. Their network was corrupted beyond repair. Their Overmind was silent, its voice lost in the static of the ruined neural web. They had 2 choices: fight or die. Most of them chose to die. The virus had broken something in their minds. Without the Overmind to tell them what to do, without the network to give their existence meaning, they simply stopped. Some sat down and never moved again. Some walked into the fires of the burning ships. Some turned their weapons on themselves. A few 100,000 tried to fight. They organized themselves into small groups and scattered across the planet, searching for enemies to kill. But they were confused and leaderless, and the virus was still eating away at their thoughts. Cole hunted them for 2 more weeks. He was not in a hurry. There was nowhere for them to go. By the end of the 6th week, the Krix presence on Velthus Prime had been reduced to scattered individuals hiding in caves and ruins. They were no longer an army. They were no longer a threat. They were just survivors. Cole found the last organized group on the 42nd day. There were about 50 of them, huddled in the ruins of what had once been a Velthari temple. They were starving. Their armor was cracked. Their weapons were empty. They saw him coming. They tried to run. They did not get far. When it was over, Cole stood among the bodies and looked up at the sky. The twin suns were setting, painting the clouds in shades of orange and purple. It was beautiful. He had almost forgotten what beauty looked like. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear singing. The Veltari survivors were emerging from their hiding places. They were finding each other. They were celebrating. They were alive. Cole sat down among the Crick's corpses and ate a ration bar. His armor was cracked in 100 places. His body was covered in wounds that were slowly healing. He had not slept in 11 days. He should have felt triumphant. He had done the impossible. He had destroyed an army of 40 million, with nothing but his own hands and a small tube of virus. But he felt nothing. Just emptiness. Just the familiar cold that had lived inside him since the Gene Wars. The mission was complete. The monster had done its work. Now the monster needed to figure out what came next. He sat there for a long time, watching the sunset, listening to the distant songs of people he had saved, and for the first time in 30 years, he wondered if there was still something human left inside him, something worth saving. Ambassador Thesson found the Terran in the ruins of a temple. It had taken him 3 days to reach this place. The journey was difficult, the roads were destroyed, the crystal forests were burned, and the skies were still dark with smoke from the burning Crick ships. But Thesson had insisted on coming himself. He needed to see the creature that had saved his world. He needed to understand. The temple had been built 1,000 years ago to honor the Velthari god of peace. Its crystal walls had once caught the light of the twin suns and scattered it into rainbows that covered the surrounding hills. Now those walls were cracked and blackened. The gardens were ash. The statues of peaceful ancestors lay shattered on the ground. And in the center of the ruins, sitting on a fallen pillar, was Marcus Cole. He did not look like a monster. That was the first thing Thesson noticed. He had expected something terrifying, something with fangs and claws and eyes full of madness. But the creature before him looked tired. He was wearing the remains of his black armor, but most of it was broken and hanging loose. His face was covered in cuts and bruises that were slowly healing. His gray eyes stared at the sunrise with an expression that might have been sadness. Ambassador. Cole did not look at him. His voice was rough and quiet. I was not expecting visitors. Thesson approached slowly. His crystalline feet made soft, chiming sounds on the broken stone. I wanted to thank you. On behalf of my people. You have saved us. Cole finally turned to look at him. His gray eyes were empty. Not cruel, not angry. Just empty. Like windows into a house where no one lived. I killed things, Cole said. That is what I do. That is all I do. You killed the Cricks. You destroyed their army. You freed my world from... I killed things. Cole's voice did not change. He spoke as if he was discussing the weather. Do not make it into something noble. There is nothing noble about what I did. I used weapons that are banned by every civilized government in the galaxy. I tortured enemy soldiers for information. I turned their own biology against them and watched them tear each other apart. He stood up slowly, his broken armor creaking. I did not save your world, Ambassador. I just killed everything that was threatening it. The difference matters. Thesson did not know what to say. He had prepared a speech, words of gratitude and praise, but they all seemed wrong now. This creature did not want praise. He did not seem to want anything at all. Why? Thesson asked finally. Why did you do it if not to save us? Cole was silent for a long moment. He looked at the sunrise again. The light was growing brighter, painting the ruined temple in shades of gold and pink. Because they told me to, he said at last. Your people asked for help. My people sent me. That is how it works. But surely you could have refused. Refused? Cole laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You do not understand what I am, Ambassador. I was not given a choice. I was made for this, built for it. They took a human being, and they stripped away everything that was not useful for killing. They modified my body so I could survive things that would kill anyone else. They modified my mind so I would not hesitate, would not question, would not feel. He turned to face Thesson. The emptiness in his eyes was terrifying. I am a weapon, Ambassador. Weapons do not refuse. They just wait until someone picks them up and points them at the enemy. Thassan felt his crystal body cracking with distress. He had never encountered anything like this. The Velthari valued life above all things. They believed that every sentient being had worth, had dignity, had a soul. But this creature, this Terran, spoke of himself as if he was nothing more than a tool. "You are more than a weapon," Thassan said. "You are a person. You have thoughts, feelings, a life of your own." "Do I?" Cole's voice was flat. "I have not felt anything in a very long time, Ambassador. Joy, sadness, fear, love, those are just words to me now. Concepts that I understand but cannot experience." He picked up a piece of broken crystal from the ground and turned it over in his scarred hands. "When I was young before they made me into this, I remember what it felt like to be happy, to laugh at a joke, to feel the sun on my face and think, this is good, this is worth living for. But that was a long time ago. Another life, another person." He dropped the crystal. It shattered on the stone floor. "Now I just wait. They put me in cold storage when there are no wars to fight. I dream of nothing, and eventually, someone decides they need a monster again, and they thaw me out, and I do what I was made to do. And then they put me back. That is terrible." Thassan's voice was barely a whisper. "That is not a life." "No," Cole agreed. "It is not. But it is the only one I have." They stood in silence for a long moment. The sun continued to rise. Somewhere in the distance, Velthari voices were singing songs of celebration. The war was over. The nightmare was ending. For most of the planet, this was a day of joy. But not here. Not in this ruined temple where a monster stood among the shadows. "What will you do now?" Thassan asked. "Go back to Earth. Report to my commanders." "And then," Cole shrugged, "back to the cold. Back to the dark. Until the next time. Is that what you want?" Cole looked at him. For a moment, just a brief moment, something flickered in those gray eyes. Something almost human. "I want to remember what it felt like to be human," he said quietly. "Before they made me into this, I want to feel the sun on my face and know that I deserve to feel it. I want to laugh at a joke because it is funny, not because laughing is a social convention that humans are supposed to follow." He posed, "But I do not know if that is possible anymore. I do not know if there is anything left inside me worth saving." He turned and walked toward the edge of the ruins, where a Terran shuttle was waiting. Its engines hummed softly, ready to carry him away from this world he had saved. Thassan watched him go. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that might give this broken creature some hope, but he did not know what to say. Just before Cole reached the shuttle, he stopped. He turned his head slightly, showing his scarred profile against the rising sun. "Ambassador, tell your people something for me." "What?" "Tell them that the Terrans did not send help. We could not. Our resources are spread too thin, our fleets too few. We could not save your world with soldiers and ships." He posed, "But we could send something else. We could send the thing that we keep locked away, the weapon that we are too afraid to use except in the most desperate situations. We sent a monster because a monster was all we had to give." He turned fully to face Thassan. "And tell them this. I am not the only one. I am not even the worst. There are others like me, frozen in mountains and bunkers across human space, waiting, dreaming of nothing, hoping that they will never be needed again but knowing that they will be." His gray eyes met Thassan's silver ones. "So the next time someone asks what the Terrans can offer, remember this day. Remember what one of us did to 40 million Cricks, and remember that we have more. Many more." He climbed into the shuttle. The door closed behind him. The engines roared, and the small ship lifted off, climbing toward the smoke-filled sky. Thassan watched until it was gone. Then he turned and began the long walk back to his people. He had a message to deliver. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 100 species shouted over each other, their voices blending into a roar of outrage and fear. Holographic displays showed images from Velthis Prime, the burned forests, the destroyed processing centers, the vast graveyard of Crick's ships still smoldering in the northern plains. And in the center of it all, the Terran delegation sat in calm silence. The Dranathi ambassador floated forward, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "This is unacceptable," he shouted. "The Terrans have violated at least 17 Concordat treaties. The use of biological weapons, the torture of enemy combatants, The complete destruction of a sentient species. The Krix are not destroyed, Director Chen replied calmly. They still have billions of soldiers across a dozen other worlds. We have merely removed them from Velthus Prime. Removed? You call that removal? The Morvani ambassador stood, his long neck stretching with anger. Your agent slaughtered 40 million living beings. He used a bioweapon that turns their own minds against them. This is not war, this is extermination. It is survival, Chen said. Your species has forgotten what that word means. The Krix do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything in their path until there is nothing left. The only way to stop them is to destroy them, completely. But the methods are what works. Chen's voice sharpened. You can debate the morality of our actions for the next 1,000 years. Write treaties about it. Hold symposiums. Award each other medals for being so very civilized. She stood up. Her eyes swept across the chamber. Meanwhile, the Velthari will rebuild their world. Their children will grow up in peace. Their culture will survive. Because we were willing to do what you were not. The Scythian representative stepped forward. Director Chen, the Concordat cannot allow this precedent to stand. If every species simply ignores the rules of war whenever it is convenient. Rules of war? Chen laughed. It was not a kind laugh. What rules did the Krix follow, Ambassador? When they were processing Velthari civilians into food? When they were breeding their soldiers in the blood of their victims? What rules protected the innocent? Silence fell over the chamber. The Concordat refused to help, Chen continued. Every single one of you. You had excuses. You had reasons. You had 1,000 different ways to say no while people were dying. She pointed at the Draenathi. You offered thoughts and prayers. She pointed at the Morvani. You cited treaty limitations. She pointed at the Scythian. You claimed neutrality. Her voice rose. And while you were making your speeches and drafting your memos, the Krix were eating children. So do not lecture me about methods. Do not lecture me about morality. You lost that right when you turned your backs on a dying world. The chamber was utterly silent now. Even the most outraged representatives had fallen quiet. Director Chen walked to the center of the platform, where everyone could see her clearly. Let me tell you something about humanity, she said. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Ice ages, plagues, predators, natural disasters, our own stupid, violent nature. Everything in the universe wanted us dead, and we survived anyway. She paused. Do you know how we survived? Not by being peaceful, not by following rules. We survived by being willing to do whatever was necessary, by fighting back against everything that threatened us, by creating monsters when monsters were needed. Her voice grew quiet, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. The creature we sent to Velthus Prime, Marcus Cole, he is not unique. He is one of hundreds. Soldiers we have modified and trained and frozen for the wars we hoped would never come. They are weapons, tools, things we are ashamed of, things we hide away and try to forget about. She looked around the chamber. But when those wars do come, when the nightmares crawl out of the dark and start eating people, we do not hesitate. We reach for our monsters. We point them at the enemy. And we watch them do the terrible work that needs to be done. The Draenathi ambassador tried to speak, but Chen cut him off. So the next time one of your worlds burns, and your fleets are too thin, and your treaties fail you, remember this day. Remember Velthus Prime. Remember what we are willing to do to protect the innocent. She turned and walked back to the Terran platform. And pray that you never need us to do it again. For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber was frozen in something that might have been fear, or might have been awe, or might have been both. Then the Morvani ambassador cleared his throat. Director Chen, the Concordat will need time to consider its response to these events. Take all the time you need, Chen said. We will be here. We always are. She sat down. Her aides handed her a data tablet, and she began reviewing reports as if nothing had happened, as if she had not just changed the galaxy's understanding of what humanity was capable of. The other species began to disperse, drifting back to their platforms, speaking in hushed voices. No sanctions were proposed. No punishments were discussed, because every single representative was asking themselves the same question. How many monsters does Terra have? And what would it take to make them use all of them? Far from the council chamber, in a cold room on a cold planet, Marcus Cole lay down in a cryogenic pod. The mission was complete. The reports were filed. The Velthari were safe. There were no more enemies to kill, no more wars to fight. For now, a technician approached him with a neural interface. "Ready, sir?" Cole nodded. His gray eyes stared at the ceiling. "Sir?" The technician hesitated. "Is there anything you want before we begin?" Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell me, the Velthari survivors, the ones in the basement of the Grand Archives, are they safe?" "Yes, sir, all 300 of them. They have been reunited with their families." Cole nodded slowly. Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a moment. Just a tiny spark of something that might have been warmth. "Good," he said. "That is good." The technician attached the interface. The pod began to seal. "How long this time?" Cole asked. "How long until someone needs a monster again?" "I do not know, sir. Could be years, could be decades, or it could be tomorrow." "Yes, sir. Could be tomorrow." Cole closed his eyes. The cold began to seep into his body. His thoughts slowed. His heartbeat faded. But before the darkness took him completely, he thought of a young Velthari named Kellis. A child who had looked at him with fear and wonder. A child who would now grow up in peace because a monster had done terrible things on his behalf. Maybe that was enough, Cole thought. Maybe that was all he could hope for. Not to be human again. Not to feel joy, or love, or hope, but to know that somewhere, in some small corner of the universe, children were safe because he existed. Maybe that was worth something. Maybe that was worth everything. The cold claimed him. His thoughts stopped. He dreamed of nothing, and somewhere in the galaxy, the concordant species looked at the stars and wondered. They had always known the universe was dangerous. They had always known that monsters lurked in the dark, but now they knew something new. The humans had monsters too, and those monsters were always waiting, always ready, always hungry for the next war. The end.